Welcome everyone to another edition of Play It Through, and on this edition it's Land of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse for the Sega Game Gear, brought to us by Sega. Land is one of the 4 of Illusion games, also with Castle, Legend, and World. Castle was released as 2 separate versions for both the Master System as well as the Sega Genesis. World was exclusive to Genesis, while Land and Legend were exclusive to the Game Gear and Master System. While the storylines of the Of Illusion games have no real connection amongst one another, the games have a very similar style as well as a similar look. They all involve Mickey Mouse and go back to the classic days of Disney cartoons. So here we go with Land of Illusion for the Sega Game Gear. In Land of Illusion, Mickey is stuck inside of a book and must help the villagers out of this new place he finds himself in. A phantom has stolen a crystal and we must get that crystal back. We will also be saving townspeople as well as royalty, who just happen to look like many characters Mickey's very familiar with. In Land of Illusion, you have a world map screen so you can select what level you want to go to. Most of the levels are going to just go straight from one to another, but there's actually times we'll have to backtrack to previous levels in order to unlock paths to get to other levels. The gameplay as well as the graphical style looks very similar to the Castle of Illusion game that was released also for Master System and Game Gear. You also have a similarity in the health system. Here we have 2 circles that represent our health, and we can also find later on in the game other circles to increase our health meter. Be careful of these tornadoes early on. Either jump into them or duck under them to avoid being pulled in. Some tornadoes like that one you're going to actually have to jump into in order to get past the spikes. In the second area of the stage, while climbing up the tree, be sure to watch out for the fruit as it falls from the tree and bounces along the path towards you. As you continue your way up, jump up and climb into this door. Walk over to the left, grabbing the barrel, and then exit with it. Be careful to avoid, of course, the spider. Drop it at the edge so you can climb up and get to the next set of platforms. Over to the right is an arrow, which when you hit it will change color. This signifies pretty much a checkpoint. When you climb up here, grab the apple and launch it into the snake's mouth to get it to close so you can climb over him, grabbing the key and completing the first stage of the game. The second level of the game has us traveling to the lake. This is the first of the levels that we'll actually have to visit more than one time. Not surprised, being a lake level, it's filled with water that will rise and fall as you move on throughout it. Be careful to ride the water just correctly so you don't try to swim in an area where the water is shallow and you end up hitting spikes. When you get over here, you'll have to wait a few seconds if the water is rising for it to fall down so that you can use Mickey's butt stomp in order to break the two rocks. Below the rocks is a door which will take you to the next area of the stage. Inside here, you can see a counter there at the bottom of the screen. Once that runs out, you'll run out of air, so you have to make sure that you get into an air patch so you can climb up and regain your breath. Every few seconds underwater though, a swift rush of water will come by, knocking Mickey backwards if you're not attached to one of the vines that are growing underwater. In the next area, swim up and then jump on top of the waterfall. A few fish will jump out, so just be careful when walking across this waterfall, as it kind of works like quicksand and you'll be pulled down if you stand still for too long. Down here, defeat the fish and you can grab the key item. After grabbing the key, swim back up and get up to the door at the top to complete the stage. Next up is the first castle level of the game, the Blacksmith's Castle. And this one has a fire theme to it, so there's going to be lots of fire pitfalls and trouble to deal with throughout the whole level. As we start off, there's some small fires burning, as well as a large fire that's pretty much chasing you throughout the whole top area. After a little bit, another fire will take its place and also start chasing you, so you have to be pretty quick to dodge the fire and make sure that you can continue on without the fire catching up ahead of you, making the whole area fire, and you'll have nowhere to go. Thankfully, after being chased by the fire for a while, you'll come to a door, reaching a checkpoint. In the next area of the stage, you have some platforms over a large river of lava. Be quick across the platforms, but also careful because a few dragons will pop out of the fire trying to hit you. Next, you'll come up to a match enemy, which when you hit it on top of its head, it catches fire. Be sure to jump on the spring to the right in order to grab a star. The star will grant you one extra piece to your health meter in the bottom left corner, so now we have 3 hits to take before we end up losing a life. Climb up the ladder and use the spring by throwing it over to the left side so you can climb over and continue on in the level. Use the rocks or Mickey's butt stomp so you can take out the enemies ahead of you on the next set of platforms. This time we have some dragons that are going to be coming out of lava, as well as some fireballs that pop out as well. Once you reach the end, there's a checkpoint, and it's time to battle the first boss of the game. The boss is a large version of the dragon we've been fighting. Pick up the rocks that are scattered throughout his area, and keep launching them into him. Thankfully, the dragon only takes 3 hits and has a pretty easy to dodge projectile. By defeating it, we save the Blacksmith, who actually is being played by Mickey's old friend, Horace Horsecollar. For saving the Blacksmith, aka Horace, we end up getting a flute item, as well as we now have to travel back to the lake in order to find another exit. The lake is different this time, as you can see, as the water no longer fluctuates from shallow to deep as we swim throughout it. After avoiding most of the enemies and swimming along the top or bottom part of the water, whichever you prefer, you'll eventually come to a dead end. Swim up to the top and jump, avoiding the door, and head off to the other part of the water. Head down here and enter this door below right here. This will take you to the other part of the same area where we had to hang onto the vines as the water tries to push us. When you get to the open area in the middle, swim upwards and jump up and you'll grab a star. The star once again gives us another piece of health, allowing us now to take 4 hits before we end up losing a life. Once you have that, swim back to the door and exit the area. Now that we have that item, swim back up and enter the door on top that we skipped earlier. The other exit to the lake now opens up a new area which takes us to the castle ruins, another stage of the game. Inside the castle ruins, we start off in the dark area where we have to pick up a lantern in order to see. With the lantern in hand, it allows the room to illuminate, allowing you to see all the enemies easier and if there's any pitfalls ahead. Sometimes you'll have to throw the lantern down in order to jump on top of it so you can get over certain walls. Be careful here and either jump on top of the pumpkins or wait for them to go up so that you can make your way over. Sometimes you'll have to jump on top of the pumpkins' heads and bounce across in order to get over the large gap of spikes. In this area, we have to pick up the gold Mickey blocks and throw it onto the spikes so we have a platform to stand on. You can go back and grab more of them if you want, or you can bounce along the pumpkins in order to get over across. If for some reason you can't make the jump and you end up getting hit by the pumpkin, just run across the spikes quickly to the door on the other side. The next area is a little bit tricky, as we have these different buttons set up throughout the level, which causes the shift of the stage. Instead of scrolling from left to right, it'll start going from right to left, backing up. You have to use this to your advantage so that you can get through the area in order to get to the key on the far right. Once you have that, hold down the button and have the screen start moving the opposite direction. You then have to get from button to button in order to actually keep the screen scrolling over to the left so that you can get to the door. I find this to be one of the cooler puzzle-solving rooms of the game. Just so you know, when it comes to the health in the game, as you see currently I have 4 and you can hold a maximum of 5. The thing is though, there's actually 1 hidden star in every level. I'm just going to show you the 3 particular red stars that I like to collect in order to get full health. If you collect a star past when you already have 5, you will end up actually just getting full health again, so you can't actually get more than 5 total health. When we finally make it back to the door, run over to the left and use the key on the big wall, and then go into the door on the left side, taking us to the next boss battle. This boss is a ghost sheep, which will fly up once we enter the room. All you have to do is use Mickey's butt stomp in order to hit it when it swoops down. Once you hit it though, a little fireball will start circling around it as well. Be very careful and try to do your best to dodge the little fireball as it moves around him and gives you the perfect opportunity on whether or not you can actually hit the ghost. It gets tougher each time you hit him because another little fireball appears. After you deliver 4 hits to him, he'll give you the potion which allows us now to shrink. With the shrinking potion, we can now go to the tiny cavern on the left side of the map, since we wouldn't be able to travel in here before. Ducking down in his Mickey, you can end up shrinking and allowing you to get into smaller areas that normal Mickey wouldn't have been able to. Be very careful of the bugs, as well as the moving platforms that move upwards towards spikes at the ceiling. There's always a nice open gap on either side of the spikes so that you can stand in between and not get crushed or hit by the spikes. Mickey can't break rocks while in his small form, so you'll have to transform out of it in order to break the rocks to continue on. Thankfully, the level is pretty straightforward, just watch out for the bugs that try to grab you as they pop out of the ground. When you make it over to the end of the area, hold up and you'll end up falling down through the hole and making it to the background type area of the stage. While in the background, this will allow you to travel through and end up finding the key. Transform back into Big Mickey, grab the key, and exit the door in order to move on to the next stage. The next level for Mickey to travel through is the flower field. In this stage, we have some worm enemies, some bees, as well as giant flower-filled platforms. Be careful and wait a few seconds in order for the pollen to fly out so you can jump on top of it and ride that across the giant Venus flytrap style flowers. The flower field ends up being a rather short level, and when you reach the end, the flower reveals the key and also opens up the door for us so we can go on. Next up, Mickey moves on and now moves into the toy factory. This level is very similar to one of the toy style levels that we had to do in Castle of Illusion. A little bit in, grab the pot, and then use it in order to hit the button so you can get to the door on the far right. Once that's open up, you can actually stand on the water gun projectile that's coming out of them. Ride them back and forth from right to left or left to right, and work your way down. Of course, also be careful of the fish that like to swim up and down in them as well. When you get down, ignore the door right there and actually continue on using Mickey's butt stomp in order to break open the rocks so that you can get down here in order to get to a large keyboard. Use the cannon and jump over to the right in order to find a yo-yo, as well as a switch to hit, and our 5th piece of health. Then, go back in the door and work your way across the keyboard once again. Inside this area, jump on the question mark block and eventually the boxing glove will come out from the bottom, springing it upwards so you can climb up. Then you'll have to ride up the different water guns in order to get up to the top platform. Wait a few seconds for the yo-yo to drop so you can end up jumping on top of it. It'll retract, allowing you to get up to the next area. Break open the large piñata with one of the rocks and throw the key at the door so you can get into the next area. Inside here we can grab a pot and use that to open up so we can fall down. There's lots of different doors to travel throughout here, so it can get a little bit confusing for sure. Once again, we'll have to turn Mickey small and wait for the block to fly up so that we can get into the next room and grab ourselves the key. We won't be able to use the key right away as we'll have to get up and jump onto the button and then use the crane in order to go over and grab the key and bring it back up towards us. Once you have the key, you can use it to open up and enter the door for another boss battle. This boss is a large card that starts bouncing around the room. All you'll have to do is use Mickey's butt stomp in order to hit it a couple of times in order for all the other cards to disappear from it and take it out. Once it gets to the other side of the screen, it'll start spinning all across, back and forth, and you'll have to jump over it. Every time it stops though, that'll give you a perfect opportunity to jump up and deliver another attack with Mickey. Overall, it's a pretty simple boss battle and it'll only take 5 hits to defeat him, and move on to the next stage. For defeating the enemy, we also save the toy maker, who happens to be Goofy. By saving Goofy, he ends up using a cannon to blow open the path so we can get to the next level of the Palace Ruins. The Palace Ruins is a level filled with a lot of these broken beams and lots more spikes to deal with. Also, be very careful of the different statues throughout the level that are going to spit fireballs at you. Up the ladder, wait for the rock to explode in a spread pattern, causing the rocks around it to break so you can actually continue on. These rock enemies can get pretty annoying, and every time you hit one of them, they will explode, and you'll have to use these in order to break open certain rocks like we did just there. When you climb up here, grab a hold of the end pot and start climbing around with it. Wait a few seconds for the rock to explode so you can get up and keep moving on with the pot in hand. You can use it by dropping it and being able to get up here so you can move on in the level. The next room can be a little bit annoying because you have a large thing of spikes that are going to come out in a straight malign pattern coming towards you. You have to move very quickly so you can avoid the spikes as they're coming out of the walls, making more and more spikes as they go. Thankfully though, if you do get hit by one, they only do one thing of damage, so it's not too painful, especially at this point since we have 5 health. Next up, we now have a rolling boulder that's going to chase us down as we move from platform to platform, throwing rocks out of our way as we try to get down. When it hits the bottom, it's time for a boss battle as the rock transforms. What you have to do is wait for the rock to run into a wall, in which case a block will fall down from the ceiling. Grab the block and wait for the right time for the rock to start smiling at you, in which case you can chuck the rock it dropped into its face and do damage to it. Just be sure that you're able to hit the rock that falls from the ceiling with Mickey's butt stomp so you can pick it up and end up being able to actually throw it into the enemy. After only a few hits, the rock's defeated and we get the rope item. This rope item will allow us to climb up a lot of the walls in the game and help us get farther in. After grabbing it, we can get the key, and we move on to the next level. The Craggy Cliff is our next stage of the game. This is the first time where we'll actually start using the rope in order to climb up the walls. As you can see, when you start climbing, you can see Mickey holding the rope over his shoulder. Just keep climbing up the mountain, avoiding the bugs or other big boulders as you make your way up till eventually you're finally able to enter inside this cave. Once inside, this is another area where we're going to have to use the small form of Mickey to get through. The large platform that we're walking on will keep rising up and down, trying to crush us against the ceiling or knock us into the spikes. Being small Mickey will definitely help out and avoid you getting crushed by some of the bigger areas. The other problem, of course, as you can see, is that the lantern has to be on screen for you actually able to see the area that you're walking through. In the next area, start climbing up the mountain again, trying to do your best to avoid the vulture enemy. As we get a little higher up, you're going to have to watch out for the boulder that moves back and forth. Just wait for it to pass before you jump up to the top area and keep climbing. After one more vulture, we'll grab the key and move on to the next level. Next up, Mickey journeys into the desert. After walking over a sand dune, we come across these little eyes moving under the sand. It ends up being a snake under there, so just one quick stomp from Mickey's butt, and that snake's taken care of. Climb over the big giant rock pyramid, and continue moving over to the right, become Minnie, and enter the small hole. The cactus enemies are no threat either, because even though they are cactuses, you can still use Mickey's butt stomp to take them out easily. When we get over here, wait for the vulture to come down into the right spot so you can end up hitting him and jumping on him in order to grab the key and unlock the door. The key to that door ends up unlocking the sandcastle, our next major castle of the game. Inside here we have some very quick moving sand waterfalls that we get pulled into, so you have to be very quick over them and keep jumping so you don't get sucked down. Here though, we actually have to go inside the sand in order to journey down into the other section of the level. Slide down just far enough so you can get underneath the rocks on top, and make sure that you don't end up jumping up too quickly and end up jumping into the spikes. Inside the next area of this castle is a large water area, where we actually have to lift up the button in order to switch the two sets of walls. Be sure when you get the opportunity to climb up and end up going in the gap open up so you can end up getting some extra air for Mickey to breathe. Be sure to come over here to get some extra air before continuing on where we're going to next. Once you've taken a breather, start swimming upwards. You have a pretty long path you have to go through with a lot of spikes, so be very careful. Stop up here to grab some extra breath before moving on past the fish enemies and going up to the upper path which we hadn't taken yet. Just be careful and use the rocks to your advantage to take out any of the fish enemies that may get in your path. Be sure to be very careful when you move on to the next area, because once again the water is rising and falling here, and you have to be very quick or careful so you don't end up hitting any spikes. The sand platforms can be a little bit annoying, especially considering they fall apart immediately after you land on them, so get ready and know what direction you're jumping next. Over here, grab the barrel and then jump on top of the geyser in order to make the other geyser come up. You'll have to drop off the pot so you can jump on top of it on the second geyser in order to get up here, hit the checkpoint, and enter the door for a boss battle. Since this boss we're going to have to be battling underwater, be sure to pick up the pot at the beginning, and as soon as he comes up you can throw it at him to get your first hit on him. Try to do your best to stay out of the water and avoid getting sucked into the tornado, because that'll suck you right up to him and end up causing you to get hit. As long as you can do your best to avoid the tornado by ducking under the tornado as it goes over or jumping out of the water as it goes over, you should have a good opportunity to get the hits in that you need. When you launch the pot at him, you gotta make sure that you launch it at the right time and you're actually able to hit him on top of his head, or else it will hit the shell and bounce off of him. Thankfully, it'll only take a few hits to defeat him, and once we're done, we'll save the king, who happens to be Donald. After saving King Donald, he ends up lending us one of his ships to use. We won't be using it yet because we first must travel to the princess's castle and complete this area before we can actually go to the island and move on from there. You immediately grab the key, but you actually cannot get to the door that exits the level right away, so we actually have to travel farther in. Use the spring and then turn mini in order to get up here, and then wait for the right opportunities to jump on top of the pumpkins to get across. It can be rather difficult to time it right, so I usually end up falling on the spikes and taking at least one hit of damage during that area. When you get to the two doors, be sure to choose the door on the left side. This will take us to the next area that we need to go to. Run through, avoiding the ghosts, and be sure to watch out for the fire from the statue. Right here, we have to wait for the ghost to show up, swoop down at us so we can jump on top of his head in order to get up to the platform above. Use the pumpkins to bounce off so you can end up reaching the ladder above you, and then get to the next area where we're going to have to stack some golden blocks and avoid the spike balls as they move back and forth. Unfortunately, once you go up, the blocks reset, so you may have to redo it a couple times to get the blocks the way you want them. For example here, we had to bring up the third block from the platforms below so that we can get up high enough here. But once we get up to this area, be sure to use your rock climbing ability with the rope in order to start climbing up the walls. Finally, after climbing up for a pretty long time, we finally reach the door of this place. The next room has long sets of spikes in a row that you'll have to climb under when they go up. Becoming small will definitely help out as it gives you an extra second or two to run under them. After we finally get past all the rising and lowering spikes, we'll come to the door of the princess. After saving the princess, who looked like Minnie, we have a magic bean. With that now, we also will travel back to the desert level. Inside here, we'll now find a secret entrance which is located inside of that large pyramid we passed over earlier. After traveling over it, come back to the left on the bottom, pick up this rock, turn small, and go inside. Once inside, pull up this button so you can get this walkway to appear in order to grab the chest, grab a coin, as well as find a hidden door. Inside the door, it'll take you inside of the pyramid where Mickey must quickly run through this area as a giant spike wall is going to be chasing him down. Be sure to climb quickly and throw the rocks out of the way fast so you don't end up getting crushed. After a few spike balls moving up and down, be sure to be on the bottom area and lift up the button fast enough so you can get up. Thankfully, if you do hit the spike wall like I did there, it only takes 1 health away. After only a few more enemies to contend with and a little bit more spike damage, we're able to finally get to a door. Be careful while traveling across the spinning platforms as well as this platform that moves when you're standing and looking in a certain direction. You can turn around to make it go the opposite direction so you can avoid getting hit by the fireballs. Wait for the right opportunity to climb up this wall and get over before the large row of spikes comes at you. By pressing this button, you'll be able to go up and grab the key. With the key in hand, open up the wall to the left and enter the door for another boss battle. This boss starts off as a large egg. You must first get it to run into the wall several times. Stand near the wall and at the right moment, climb up or jump over it so it ends up crashing in. After a few times it crashes, it'll open up revealing a snake inside. Jump on the snake's head a couple of times and he'll spring out of the egg and bury himself underground. You then must walk over the large dune and jump on top of it in order to get it to pop back out, in which case you can actually do damage to him. Thankfully, it ends up being a pretty simple boss battle, and we also get another great item for it. These shoes will allow us to walk on clouds, which we're going to have to do in order to climb up the beanstalk that we're going to be building in the next level. Using King Donald's boat, we now travel to the island, in which case we use our bean that we got from Minnie in order to grow this very long beanstalk. Start by climbing up the leaves of the beanstalk, and with the shoes that we got from the previous level, you'll be able to jump on the clouds that are on the right and left sides of the beanstalk. Jump into this tornado so you can get over to the left side and get a hold of this vine that's sticking down. Once again, you'll have to wait for a tornado to show up so it can bring you over to the vines on the right side. When you reach the top, you'll be able to find a key sitting on top of a cloud on the left, and a door will appear, allowing us to get to the next level of the game. After traveling all throughout the land, Mickey reaches the top of the beanstalk and can now enter the Phantom's Castle, the final stage. Being the final stage of the game, it can be a little bit tricky, as we have these large rocks that move in two separate tracks along the long lava-filled and spike-filled path. You have to bounce in between both of them back and forth so you can avoid falling or end up getting your head hit. The good news is there's a red star on the right side right by the door when we go to the next area, so you can get full health right away. Be careful in the next area and wait for the giant wrecking balls to fall down before you end up going over. Be sure to grab the key because we're going to need it farther in. After the wrecking ball goes up, go inside the door. Avoid the key for now. Inside here, crawl under and then jump up the other side so you can end up pulling up this large button. By pulling up the button, you've opened up an area of water for us, but we can't go in there quite yet. So exit out the door and grab the key again, and start working your way back over to the left. You'll have to use the key on the same wall we had already opened up, in which case now you'll see that water area that we pulled up with the button. But we don't want to go in there quite yet because you want to make sure you have a key. Jump over to the left, grab the key, and then work your way back and jump into the water now. When you fall through, you'll be on the opposite side, in which case you can see everything's kinda upside down here, including the enemies like the spider. Continue all the way over to the left, and eventually you'll come across the button. Jump up and hit the button, and then start moving back to the right. Be sure to watch out for the wrecking balls that now have been opened up. Open up the wall using the key, and pass a few more wrecking balls before you finally come to another door. The next room ends up being a little bit tricky. The door is evil and will start bouncing around the room, and when you attack it, it stands still and you're actually able to enter it. The thing is, we're going to need the door in the right spot, so go back through if you've already hit it, and get the door to start following you across a large amount of spikes. Once it reaches the opposite end of the room, then you want to jump on it and enter the door so you'll be on this side and can press this button. Then, avoid the spiders as you work your way back over to the left and enter the door on the far left. By doing so, you'll be able to enter this area of the stage. Swim down into the water and try to do your best to avoid the spikes along your path. Eventually, you'll reach the end of the water and fall down to enter a door to enter the final boss battle. When the Phantom appears, immediately jump over and deliver your first attack to him, and then run to the opposite side of the room and become small. This way you won't even have to dodge it as he throws out the large amount of fireballs at you. Every time you deliver a hit, and after his fireball projectile will start spinning around in a tornado. Just jump over and try to do your best to avoid it. When he's on the ceiling though, he'll put his arms up in the air and cause rocks to fall down. One rock will stay and you'll be able to pick it up and launch it at him when he stops moving. When he's in his swirling cloud form, it bounces around the room and just try to do your best to be under it or jump over it when it's down. When he stops in this form though, he'll cause 2 lightning bolts to appear around him. Just do your best to avoid it by being on the opposite side and deliver a hit when you have the opening. After only a few hits he'll explode, you'll be able to get the crystal back and enjoy the ending. While being a huge fan of Disney games overall, Land of Illusion ends up being one of my favorite platformers available on the Sega Game Gear. While it's not overly complicated and may be a little simple for some people's taste, I end up finding it to be a very enjoyable platformer that has some great tie-ins with the different characters from Disney. Throughout the many years of video games being created, very few companies, in my opinion, have been able to create a very enjoyable Disney game. And I have to admit that Sega, as well as Capcom, are probably 2 of the best that have ever been able to get a hold of the Disney license. And as we get our end screen, with that's going to wrap up this edition of Play It Through. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course, I hope you enjoyed.